Miss Evangeline Pardisi, other members of the SPE board, the distinguished panelists presenting this afternoon, Ms. Rachel Quamina, Laura Lee Seals, Ms. Karl Muckette, and to you, my esteemed guests, a pleasant good afternoon. Our SPE technical talk this evening walked along the lines of assisting us both mentally and emotionally to deal with this pandemic, or as we know it today, the new normal. COVID-19 brought many adaptations to our regular everyday lives, and 9 out of 10 times, these changes can be quite challenging. This delivery provides 3 different angles from 3 different individuals on how they've been coping during this pandemic. Firstly, I would like to introduce Mrs. Rachel Quamina. Rachel Quamina is a wife to an amazing man, Luke, and a mother of 2 beautiful children, Rhonda and Elle, who are 16 months apart. She's an interior designer by profession, and art and design has been a passion of hers from a very young age. She strongly believes that it is important to focus on things that make us happy. Family is one of the most important aspects of her life. She is very intentional about making time for what matters most while creating beautiful memories with a family of 4. Being a parent is demanding but rewarding job. And as a relatively new parent, she is still navigating the role of mom while balancing other aspects of her life. Mrs. Quamina will be enlightening us on the unique stresses faced by parents as well as how to deal with them.
Hi everyone. Ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna just chat a little bit about coping with the unique stresses facing parents during this pandemic. It's definitely been a challenge globally that we've all been faced with, and so I just wanted to give some practical tips. I'm a mother of 2, as you guys just heard, and it's easy to feel like we have so many roles to fulfill, these days, and it's hard sometimes to like wrap our minds around performing all of them well. But it's important to give ourselves grace and to remind ourselves that this is a unique situation and it's a global pandemic, and that none of us have ever had to face this before. So parents, give yourself grace, and I hope that these tips will help you to find a sense of balance and keep your stress levels in check. So the biggest thing for me in terms of being able to cope thus far is self-care. I think it's extremely important and it's essential. It's not just a luxury. We have to take care of ourselves first, as parents especially, to be able to be better parents and to be able to cope with the task at hand. And since we're feeling like we've been pulled in so many different directions, sometimes it feels like we can't even really take care of our basic needs, much less relax or unwind. But we can't pour from an empty cup. And so we kind of have to like put the mask on ourselves first and then take care of, our household and our family and our children. So self-care is essential. And I think some ways to practice self-care are to spend some time alone. We're all confined in our homes more than we've ever been. And personal time is kind of gone out the window in a sense sometimes, especially for parents. So I think it's important to make it a point to carve out some time for yourself, you know, whether it's taking a walk or practicing a relaxation technique, or even a solo trip to the supermarket, you know, or the pharmacy. Like for me, that definitely helps, just to even like escape for an hour by myself. That helps me to like reset a little bit and get my energy back to go again and deal with my family and my kids. We have to also prioritize our well-being. You know, I think it's really important to prioritize our well-being as much as possible. This means something different to every single person. But some examples of prioritizing our well-being could be, you know, just eating healthy, getting out and doing some exercise, trying to get as much rest and as much sleep as possible. So I think that's very important. You know, there's no one size fits all guide to coping during this time. And my advice is really to just practice taking it day by day. You know, don't fall into a comparison trap as a parent. Sometimes we compare ourselves to, you know, especially with social media, like we compare ourselves to what other parents are doing versus what we're doing. And we can fall into that trap. So don't. You know, every family has its own set of concerns and priorities. And we're all going through this pandemic at the same time, but we're not in the same boat. Everyone has, you know, different challenges that they're facing during this time. So don't set yourself up for failure either by having high expectations of what you can get done. You know, every day is going to be different. It's up and down. You know, things are uncertain. So some days you may not get everything done, but don't despair. It's okay. Sometimes, you know, I give my kids fast food instead of being in the kitchen for 2 hours to prepare a meal. Sometimes I just get something quick because I just need the time to myself, you know, that extra hour or two. And it's totally okay. Another tip is to create a routine. You know, a routine tends to give you a sense of normalcy during an uncertain time. So create routines for your children, you know, a general outline of what the day should look like and try to stick to it, you know, breakfast at this time, you know, bath time at this time, you know, this is when we have homeschooling time, and try to designate a workspace for each member of the family. It's important to set up like a designated homeschooling environment that works well for your children, your child. Every child is different. I have young children, so I cannot necessarily speak to, you know, every age group, but I have to do what's right for my child. And then another thing is to not focus only on the negative. I know that during this time it can be hard to think about the positives, but you know, it's not all bad. And some positive things to think about are the unique teaching moments that we have with our children one-on-one. You know, we have an opportunity to teach our children about resilience and about learning to adjust and adapt to sudden changes that are inevitable during, you know, this life that we live. And we can use this time to teach our children firsthand, you know, that they have tremendous capacity to overcome adversities. So that's something I think that's important to focus on as well. And then we also need to really be intentional about protecting our children's mental health. You know, it can be tricky to explain what's going on to certain age groups, but we need to find a way to talk to our children about the situation that's at an age appropriate level. You know, to have patience with them, to figure out what's going on in their minds and have them open up about their feelings. And, you know, they're also experiencing stress. And so we have to be patient with them and know that this is a major life adjustment for them as well. We have to continue to talk to them about, you know, safety precautions. And I think by, you know, we can empower them. We can empower them by having them open up to us and show them how we, you know, as their parents are taking steps as well. So keeping the lines of communication open so that we don't build up fear in our children. I think that's important. And you know, it's hard to run indefinitely. I was telling someone, you know, the other day, it's easy to run a race when you know exactly how many miles you have to run. But when you're told to just run indefinitely, it's like, it's so much harder to do. And I feel like that's kind of what we've been told to do. Like I remember thinking, okay, like this is gonna be over by September. Like we're gonna start to normalize by September, you know, back in March, I was thinking that. And that's not the case for us. We're kind of through our wave now here in Trinidad. And so we're kind of burning out, and we have to make sure that we continue to do things to keep our sanity and to cope. And you know, it's like we're spending months living in the unknown, and it's not an easy task, but it's important to find techniques that can help us to cope, and to keep a sense of structure and sanity, you know, as we navigate this new normal. So I hope that sharing with you these couple different, you know, tips, you know, will help you. And feel free to ask questions at the end if you would like me to answer anything else or share anything else. So that's it for me.
Just a quick announcement, everyone. If you want to ask questions at the end and possibly your connection may give trouble, the chat is available. You can type questions and we will direct them to panelists after for the question and answer segment. Ms. Quamina, thank you very much for your words of wisdom. And I am positive that those words would go a very lengthy way for those parents that are present this afternoon.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to warmly invite Miss Laura Lee Seals. Laura Lee Seals is a past student of the prestigious Naparima Girls High School, where she fulfilled several student leadership roles throughout her time. She is currently pursuing her bachelor's in physical therapy at University of the West Indies on campus, and has her eyes set on specializing in neurophysiotherapy. She has a diverse background in performing arts as a former Female Games Committee chairperson for Ansel Robinson Hall, as well as former Cultural Entertainment Affairs chairperson for the UWE Physical Therapy Student Association. Ms. Seals would educate us on controlling emotions as a university student.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I just want to start off by saying that I am not a professional student, nor am I a perfect student. But just like each and every one of you all, you know, I am going through the same, if not a similar change and adjustment. And I'd just like to share some tips that I would have learned throughout the past 6 months, and some tips, you know, that may hopefully help some of you all. So with the pandemic, there have been many, many changes. We literally had to pick up and basically stop, and had a complete change in our lifestyle and our routine. And, you know, even though we may be getting into the groove of how we were adapting to university and how we were going to approach our studies and approach work, and we set our goals, it was kind of interrupted by the sudden onset of the pandemic in Trinidad. So I was actually forced to come back home to Trinidad from Jamaica with like a 2-day notice. And I've been here ever since, and I'm actually in the transition to try to get back for studies, because even though there are many cases, we are still required to do face-to-face classes, because it's such a hands-on program. So I'm actually currently dealing with some hectic emotional processes right now, and I actually had to remind myself of some of these things. But controlling our emotions as university students with all these different stresses and these new changes, it will become extremely overwhelming, especially in addition to our already stressful transitional period, like in our lives as late teenagers, early adults. It is pretty stressful trying to find the balance of where you are, what you want to be, what you want to do with your life, and where you stand. And with these new changes, one thing that I've learned is that controlling your mindset is simply your most powerful tool. If you can actually learn to control that one voice in your head that actually influences you to either procrastinate or puts you to a place of overthinking or gets you overwhelmed and then you end up in a depressive episode. Like, I completely understand because I also suffer with it. And I mean, I feel like we all can relate to some level. Some persons here may have already gone through this phase. Some may now be going through the phase and some may not have gone through it as yet. But I'm just hoping that some of these things that I'm about to share will at some point in time shed some light and make it a little easier to go through and to get through. So what I believe is that you, especially for the past 6 months, we had to master the art of adapting and to control what we can control. I'm a person, I simply like to, if I could control everything, I would. If I could get things the way I like to get them, I would. But these past 6 months, plans have literally been changing every day. It's something new. And you just have to work with it and roll with the punches, and you have to do what you have to do. It may inconvenience you. It may be very difficult. It may be very frustrating, but at the end of the day, you have to get it done. And it's how you approach it, your perspective to the situation, your reaction to the situation, and the habits that you have that would actually make an influence as to what your product or your outcome will be like. So when I say control what you can control, you cannot control what is happening, because just like Mrs. Quamina mentioned before, we don't know when the pandemic is going to end. We don't know when we are going to be required to stop running. We are literally just going through the motions. But one thing that we have to accept in order to keep our peace of mind, so to speak, is as hard as it is, if you are able to silence that one voice, or actually take control of that one voice that sets you off, it can change your lifestyle and the different aspects of your life. It will literally change your working habits. And as students, especially now having online classes, self-discipline is one of the most important things that we can have or that we can master. And it's hard. It's easier said than done. Trust and believe. I know it is easier said than done, but it's the best investment that you can possibly make at this time. And yes, we would have had a lot of time previously to try to actually master these practices, if so to speak, but it's actually never too late to start, because you are investing time, money, and energy behind a degree in order to have a profession, have a career, make a lifestyle, and build a life that you want. And just like that, you are to invest energy and time into yourself and how you approach it. So if you are able to actually adapt, tackle whatever you are faced with, and you are able to literally silence all the negativity around you and tackle what you need to do and get through it, it's a little clearer when you can take, even if it's a minute of your day, 5 minutes of your day. I have personally realized, or I learned for myself, that literally taking 5 minutes a day to sit in silence, and I don't mean silence still on your phone, but literally in silence, just sitting, lying down, even if it's just standing, to do nothing and just kind of take a minute to take a break from everything that is going on, you will see a change in how you function throughout the day, in how you are able to tackle your studies and how you approach things. Because if you think about it, just like your phone, if your phone is constantly going, if you are constantly going, if your mind is constantly going, then you are going to burn out. You are more likely to burn out if you do not take a break. And it's not a break to jump from your phone to the TV, or to jump from your phone to the laptop, or to jump from studying to go on Instagram and browse through, and then you see these quotes that have you thinking about, oh, I deserve this and I don't want this. Like, it could be a lot. And so my point to draw from that as well is that what you surround yourself with, what you feed yourself, is very, very, very important, and it plays a very important role in how you carry yourself and in how you approach things. A grateful heart and a grateful person attracts. If you constantly focus on negative things or what is going wrong, that's literally all you are going to see. You know, it's cliche when they say, you know, you have to try to find that silver lining, or you just have to find the good in things. It's easier said than done, but literally your perspective can change what you are going to do. How you speak changes how you approach and how you perform. Because literally when you say, oh, I don't feel like doing it, I'm too tired, that is literally how your attitude is going to be. You need to pull yourself out from that, and you have to hold yourself accountable, and you have to get it done, because time is not waiting for anyone. It's not waiting for anyone. It does not care. The world does not care if you are tired. The world does not care if you have 5 other things going on. If you are faced with this, it's still gonna happen. And it's literally how you approach it that will make the difference and will affect how your world is, as I keep saying. So what I have started doing, I am interested in how you can rewire the brain. You call it neuroplasticity. Basically, someone who has been through trauma, or if you are suffering from chronic stress, your brain literally becomes accustomed to always being in that fight or flight mode. You are constantly in that overdrive, you know, that overdrive state, and it's not healthy. Like for your body, physically, it's not healthy, and it can manifest in illnesses. And as students, any downtime really and truly affects how we are able to prepare for finals, and then it affects our GPA. So I started looking into videos on YouTube, because as I said, I'm not a professional. So there were some, like 2 things that I subscribe to, or that I would look at, just to get some insight on maybe some perspectives that I could probably adapt, or certain things that I could change, and just some insight. And that would be Freedom in Thought on YouTube. They have some really pretty interesting videos, as well as TED Talks on any topic that I may have found interesting. And what I would suggest is to not just invest time in what you are currently studying or what you are planning to study, because I feel like there's a range of students here. Don't just invest time in that, but invest in a holistic, if to say a holistic topic, so that you can have holistic knowledge. So when you go on YouTube, don't just look at the same things, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot about yourself that you could learn. So even the things that you follow on Instagram, and the things that you are constantly seeing on your phone, and you're constantly seeing all around, and you're listening to, even music, as simple as music, it plays a role, and it has an effect. As she mentioned, I do physical therapy, so I cannot have this session without mentioning physical activity. Exercise plays a very important role. And I know when I say exercise, everybody thinks I mean like you have to go outside and you have to sweat. Like you have to sweat and you have to trip and sweat, or you have to go and lift some weights or something like that. Literally, it's just physical activity. You can just choose one exercise that you want to do, because if you think about it, we're behind the screens for majority of the day. And we're in quite a sedentary, so to speak, like a sedentary state for most of this time. Because it's either you are in class, or you're just lying on your bed, and you go from lying down and you wake up in the morning and you just turn on the laptop or you turn on the tablet, and then you're in class. And we have adapted this lifestyle, and we've been having this lifestyle for a couple months, and it will have an effect on our bodies that we will eventually pay for. So literally find one exercise. I do a couple just because of what my goal is, but you set a goal for what you want for yourself. invest in yourself. Literally take like an hour of the 24 hours that you have in a day, take 1 hour to invest in yourself. And you have to stay committed to it, because that's the only way you will see results. Just like when you're trying to improve your GPA and you say, okay, I am going to put the work in and I'm going to get it. I'm going to be better this semester. I'm going to study. These unrealistic, if so to speak, goals that we give ourselves, and you say, okay, but then you slack off by the middle of the semester. That's not going to get you where you want to go. And that is the harsh reality that we have to accept. So just like your work, you need to invest in yourself. Even if it's just some jumping jacks, if it's some pull-ups, if it's some push-ups. And it's okay, because you may start off weak and it might be a little shaky and your form might not be there. But the point is that you're doing it. And then you keep progressing it. So literally just 1 hour of the day. If you want to choose the hour on Tuesday to just sit and do nothing, that's fine. That's for your mental health. If you want to go, you spend your hour and you want to do some exercises for at least 15 minutes, I recommend 15 minutes a day, at least just do something active for 15 minutes a day. It will make a difference. You will feel better emotionally as well, and your mental health will also benefit from these investments. One thing I also learned is that if you know, we are always on our phones. If you set an alarm for at least, I mean, if this is if you are bad, like if you're bad at actually keeping up with the classes and you forget that you have classes because of how the schedules have changed, set an alarm when you literally put your schedule on your phone and set an alarm for 5 minutes before your class, so that even if you are occupied or you're scrolling or you're whatever and you just lose track of time, it's there. Because you have to hold yourself accountable. We still have to get this degree, whether COVID-19 is here or not. We have to get it. We are not spending all this money to not get it. Okay? So you have to do what you have to do, and you really have to apply yourself. And I know that it is difficult, because some people may not even be comfortable just being home. It's difficult for some people to simply be home and have to do it, because for me, I've been the least productive for the past like 6 months. Like, this is the least productive that I've ever been, and it's a change, because now I have to go back to face-to-face classes, and I just have to like readjust again. And it takes resilience. It really does. But it will pay off. Your effort will not go unseen, and I promise you that. I'm not saying that you're just going to get straight A's. You're not going to get it just like that. You have to apply, and you have to be serious about it. You have to set your mind. I can't just tell you these things and then you're like, okay, well, it's going to happen. You actually have to believe it, want it, and apply it, and do what it takes to get there. You have to want it for yourself. I can't want it for you. Your mommy can't want it for you. And you can't just say, well, I want to do good, so it's going to happen. You literally have to make the sacrifices that comes with it. Your posture also influences your attitude. You're slouching whole day, you're lying down whole day, you're going to feel pretty lethargic, and then you're going to be confused as to why you're just feeling so down and out of it, and you don't feel like yourself, and it's just like, it is what it is, and you kind of lose yourself. And I get that, because I also went through that phase, and it's difficult. But literally, your posture makes a difference. Moving from your bed to a table makes a difference for studying. Getting out of your head and telling yourself, here it is, I have class, and I don't want to, but I have to. Yes, it's going to have a recording. It may have a recording at the end, and you're like, okay, I could just go look at the recording when I'm ready, because I'm not in the mood right now. You would not have had that luxury if you had face-to-face class. So if it works for you, don't get me wrong, if it works for you, use it. But try to adapt and try to make the best out of the time that you have now. And don't develop habits that you will regret in the future when things return to normal. The actual normal, not the new normal. My last thing, which kind of sums up everything that I would have said, is that you get what you put in. So the same concept of you want it, but you're not really putting in the work for it. So you want the summer body, but you're still eating like, and you're still lying down whole day. It's not gonna happen. You want to feel good, right? You want to feel better. You want to feel like yourself again, but you're still gonna do the same thing that you were doing, or the same routine or order of events that got you to that place. It's not going to work. You have to literally identify the problem, you have to identify the issue, and you have to change. You have to make lifestyle changes, and I promise you that it's not just going to benefit you during COVID-19. It will, as an adult, with a family, as a working person, whatever profession you choose. Self-discipline, it comes back to that. Self-discipline is one of the most powerful tools that you can acquire. And I strongly recommend being able to tap into that. And it may sound easy, it may sound queer to some, because I mean it is a bit abstract, but once you actually start trying to practice, because it takes practice. The first time you may not get it. You may feel like you're getting it, but you're probably not going to get it. What has helped me is literally picturing that I'm clearing my thoughts out of my head, and I just sit there. You have to like actively do it, and I'm saying it takes practice, but it shows. It shows in your energy level, emotions, in your attitude, in your mood, in your lifestyle, and as Ms. Quamina mentioned, the way you eat as well. It affects it, but it all starts in your head. Your head is literally the one thing that controls everything that goes on. All your habits, all your decisions, that's in your head. And if you could get control of that and control what you can control, then I promise you that these past couple of months and the months to come, with COVID-19 still being here, will not be a waste, and your effort will definitely pay off. So I hope, and I hope, and I hope, and I hope that I at least helped someone in some way. And if there are any further questions or anything that you personally may want insight on, if I can help in any way that I can, I will be open at the end to answer questions. Thank you.
Definitely a wonderful presentation. Thank you for your very informative presentation that would assist to ensure that the academic workload as well as the well-being is held intact. I mean, who better and understand this than a student self, right? Lastly, it brings me great pleasure to introduce our very own Karl Muckette. Karl Muckette is the founder of Virtual Community, which is a community practice ushering in an personal professional development. He is also a senior instructor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. He has been invited to the SPE Mentor Talk, in which he will provide individuals with strategies for increasing the likelihood of academic success, particularly challenges of the pandemic restrictions. Is entitled Strategy for Learning from, and would also provide tips for parents to improve communication with their children during this period. Mr. Muckette.
Thank you very much, Karishma. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Let me commend the SPE on the initiative and to wish you guys all the best in your continued efforts in everything that you're doing. Thanks very much for the invitation to speak at the event. Although I've been listening to the two previous speakers, perhaps you didn't need me, but I'll see what I can continue to contribute. One of the key things, even before we start talking about strategies for effective learning, stay at home. Before I go there, well, I have two sons. One is 25 years old and he's not in the country. He's playing football abroad. And I have a 16-year-old. And some of the tips that I would share with you here would be based on my interaction with my 16-year-old, as well as the fact that I teaching from home as well, and I've been teaching from home from the summer semester as well as this current semester. But to begin, we have different dimensions of well-being, and these dimensions of well-being include spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, social, financial, occupational, and even environmental or societal. And what has happened within the past few months, perhaps from the beginning of the year, is that there has been a collapse of all the activities that would amalgamate to the respective dimensions. There has been a collapse into one space, and that space is called the home. So whereas in the past we would go to church or a place of worship to deal with spiritual well-being, we are forced to deal with it at home in some cases. Whereas we would go to the gym and do some exercises or play a sport and get physical well-being, that too is at home. In terms of our intellectual well-being, where we try to get specialized knowledge, we would either go to school, go to the university. Some of us would go professional development workshops at our workplace, as the case may be. That too is home. In terms of financial well-being, well, in some instances, persons are able to maintain their livelihood. In some instances, persons are dependent on grants. In some instances, persons are dependent on creativity, aka the susu, or the pyramid, as the case may be. So with all these things happening, you have a threat to your emotional well-being. And your emotional well-being is your ability to treat with the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life, the good and the bad, the easy and the not so easy, as the case may be. And you would be taking hit upon hit upon hit. And one of the things that we need to do, and Laurelie hinted to it, is rewire the way we think. Begin to think differently about the situation. And from my estimation, we have different voices in our heads. And one author described it as the inner critic, the inner defender, and the inner guide. And the inner critic is that voice that makes us think less about ourselves, less about our chances of succeeding, less about our chances of doing well, less about our chances of surmounting obstacles. That's the inner critic. And because of the hardship that some of us may experience during this period, and because of the hardship that we may see our parents experience, or because of the hardship that we see people around in the environment or around us throughout the country, because of that hardship, we may want to be listening to that inner critic that is saying things are bad and things not looking up and we're going nowhere fast, etc., etc. One of the things we have to do is banish the inner critic. The inner defender is that voice within our heads that allows us to make excuses. So we could be, if our grades are poor, we could say it's because of the pandemic that we get poor grades. If we don't do well in subject areas, we could say it's because our lecturers are not good at teaching from home. Our lecturers didn't rise to the occasion in terms of online teaching. We could say a number of things because our inner defender would allow us to produce these excuses to make us feel good, to reduce this cognitive dissonance, this dissonance that tells us we're not as good as we would like to think we are. We would like to find excuses to justify that. But if we could cause ourselves to begin listening to the inner guide, there's this voice within us, an inner guide, and the inner guide says, notwithstanding whatever the situation might be, there's a causal relationship between the things we want and the activities we engage in. And if we could identify the activities that would produce the results that we want, notwithstanding the challenging times, if we could engage in the level of effort that is required to produce the quality of results that we want, we would find a level of success. So in short, I'm saying that all of this that just collapsed on us, we are still standing. It means that we are strong. It means that we have something special, something extraordinary we didn't know we have before COVID-19. We have that, and we're demonstrating again and again that we're resilient. We are putting the pieces together bit by bit, and we're going forward. But we need to begin to think differently about the situation and not think from a hopeless perspective. So I wanted to open with that. Now, I also mentioned that I have a 16-year-old son who is the love of my life. I don't know if I'm the love of his life, but he's the love of my life. And I'm trying to get him to settle and focus into studying from home. And we were having a conversation, and I made some notes here. One of the biggest challenges that I'm having is getting him to take studying from home seriously. He doesn't take it as serious as he should. If you had to get up and go to school, you would go to bed at a certain time, you would get up a certain time, you would prepare yourself as the case may be. Now, you have a lot more free time because you don't have to iron your clothes, you don't have to get up early to get breakfast, to drive to school. You don't have to do that. But you're going to bed whatever time you feel like it. Sometimes I'll be like, Jordan, I think you could lap off that game now and go and sleep, please. I have to negotiate with him for him to go and sleep. And he would get up like 5 minutes. Well, the 5 minutes that you talk about, Laurelie, he's using that 5 minutes to get up. So he's actually getting up at 5 minutes before. And when he gets up, he go and brush his teeth and he look to bed and then he would do whatever it is. And he would be late for class and classes in his bedroom. And the only reason he's doing that is because he is not taking things as seriously as he should. And I will get to the part with parents why I am not attempting to force him. I'm attempting to bring him around to the understanding. But that's one of the things that we have to do. Get our children or students have to begin to take this as serious as if they've been attending class. Now, a second thing, there's a tendency to click onto your Zoom call and continue with whatever it is you were doing. And I'm trying to convince him that you're not doing the lecture or anything like that. You're not tricking the lecturer, you're not fooling the lecturer. As an instructor, I myself am aware that my responsibility is to facilitate the students' understanding of a particular subject matter. And if I'm making myself available to do that for you, and you're not making yourself accessible to that, you're not doing me anything. So students need to be cautioned against that kind of behavior. The kind of behavior that says, they wouldn't know if I'm listening. I'm just gonna log on and I'll just be there and I'll get marks for attending, or I wouldn't be ridiculed or anything like that for not attending. So they have to get over that. Now, in terms of doing preparatory work, nobody's gonna say, okay, bring up your assignment, let me see the progress that you made. So he does the least he could do and get away with it. And if he doesn't have to, he wouldn't. And we have to get over that. It calls for a greater level of maturity and self-discipline. And that self-discipline is actually doing what you have to do when you have to do it, whether or not you feel like it. You can't procrastinate simply because you feel like procrastinating, because procrastinating would result in one of three things. One, you would do poor work. Two, you would be hurry and put yourself under that unnecessary stress. Or the third thing is that you would feel so despondent you just wouldn't do anything. So we have to begin to take it that serious that we're not just procrastinating indefinitely. Another thing is managing distraction. So he's using one phone for his Zoom class and he's texting his brethren on another phone. Or if he's using his tablet for his Zoom class, he's texting his brethren or something like that. Or a brethren would come out and give him a call and that kind of thing. And I have to say, hey, J-boy, you have to manage distraction. You have to tell your friends that you'd be in school from 9 to 12, and it's just 2 days a week. You'd be in school from 9 to 12, 2 days a week. They can't come now. These are some of the things that we have to get into our children. Finally, in terms of the home, the location is a good place. Now, there are some rooms in your home that you get strong internet connectivity and some rooms that you don't get strong internet connectivity. And you may have the situation like we do where I want the good internet because I'm teaching, but he needs the good internet because he's going to school. So we have to work that out by communication. More than anything else, getting through this as a family and doing well, we need I call it my cup, and it's just CUP. Communication, understanding, and patience, more than anything else. Because he wants the best internet access, I want the best internet access. He wants whatever. So we have to always be communicating. We have to always understand each other, and we have to be very, very patient. Now, these are some of the things that I want him to get under control, and I'm thinking that any student who attempts to put this into practice could benefit from it. But I'm watching the time, and I wanted to get to some of the things that, in terms of my own experience with lecturing, that I wanted to share. And I want students to manage their listening behavior. And what do I mean by manage your listening behavior? I may not get onto the part for the tips. Perhaps if people ask questions, we would go through there in terms of the tips for parents, but I want to say this. Manage your listening behavior. Now, attention, there are different dimensions of attention. So we could have internal or external, we could have broad or narrow. Now, if I am your lecturer, I am your instructor, and I am coming through your computer or your phone to you as a student, your attention should be external, narrow. It means that it should be outside of you and narrow to the point that you're facing, you're focusing on what I'm saying to you. Now, if it's internal, it means that you're thinking about a lot of different things, notwithstanding I'm talking to you. So you're here interfacing in the class, but you're not here in terms of presence of mind. And that is exceptionally important. Within the home, there may be different levels of conflict taking place. Let's say a mother and a father is arguing. Let's say a mother and a sibling is arguing. Let's say two siblings are arguing. These things would be going on around you. But you have to have the ability or the capacity or the maturity to block these things out for the period of time such that you could focus on your classes. And that's why I talk about communication, understanding, and patience, because you could say to your parents, hey, listen, I know you guys going at each other, but this is the period where I need to focus. If you could manage that kind of situation. So that's one of the things. Our attention should be external and narrow, focusing on what the lecturer is sharing with us. Try to not say that lecturer boring and zone out. Even if the lecturer is boring, you have to not focus so much on the delivery, but try to get the content. So the lecturer might be boring and, well, in your words, boring. Not that I'm agreeing that his teachers are boring or anything, but try not to zone out because the lecturer is boring, or try not to zone out because the subject matter became complicated. So because the level of difficulty raised with the subject, understanding in the way that you wanted to understand. And well, I mentioned this already, don't pretend to be listening when you're not. So lots of people on the Zoom and they're playing on their phone pretending to be listening. Write questions down that you may wish to ask instead of interrupting the presenter or the instructor the moment something comes to you, because it will only prolong the session. And speaking of prolonging the session, final tip I'm going to give in this regard is don't unnecessarily carry on a point with an instructor simply because you're not satisfied with the answer that was provided. You would take the conversation in a direction that would use up the time and not allow for the optimal use in terms of the subject matter to be covered. So sometimes you're not satisfied with the answer. Don't go on and on and on. There's another resource that would be made available, your WhatsApp group, your personal interface with the lecturer, that you can pick that up after. Good? So I'm seeing it's 6:55, and one other thing I wanted to share was some tips for parents, but I don't know if the time would allow it. Madam Chairperson, could you guide me?
You can go ahead.
Are you sure? If you're not sure, we could just deal with the questions. Yeah? All right, so quick tips for parents and for myself included. 1, pick up on problems before they get out of control. So try to spot problems at their earliest. You know we're gonna have a problem here. How can I treat with this at this point before it escalates? Pick up on problems before. And you can do that by paying attention. Not just saying, well, okay, he has it covered, he's doing his school when it's time, but no, pay attention to what's going on, ask questions, make yourself available to provide some support. Even though you may not know some of this schoolwork, a parent may not know some of this schoolwork, make yourself available, even if it's just to tell a story. Make time for conversation. If your son or daughter comes to you and they want to talk, doesn't matter how busy you are, make that time to talk. Because the age group, let's say 13 to 19, they are more interested in their peers. And if you have somebody between the age 13 to 19 and they're coming to you as a parent to talk, make time to listen, make time for that conversation. Regardless of what you may think is important, that is extremely important because they are going through certain crises in their heads and looking for direction and answer, and you're the best person to provide it. Listen empathetically instead of biographically, and let me break that down real simple. Listen empathetically. You empathize with their situation, who they are. They are a 15 or 16 or 14 or 15 or 16-year-old sharing a concern with you. You are an adult and you want to treat with that situation as an adult. You have to be willing to put yourself in that person's shoe and not say things like, when I was going to school, I never did this and I never did. When I was going to school, my parents would give me, when I was going to school, I would have done gas slap already. When I went, no. Listen empathetically. Good? Validate their efforts. So once they're doing the right thing, hey, nice work. I appreciate the fact that I didn't have to wake you up. I appreciate the fact that you're doing independent study. I appreciate these things that you're doing. Offer positive encouragement and help with making better decisions. Just talk about that. And finally, try listening to what is not being said and try to get your wisdom in that statement. There may be things that they're not saying because, as mentioned, different people would cope with their stresses in different ways. And we have to be on the alert as parents to what they are not saying to us and try as best as we could to provide all the support that we could provide to help them to do well. So these are some of the tips that I wanted to share. I'm happy to, if we didn't exhaust all the Q&A time, I'm happy to be of service in answering any questions you guys may direct.
Thank you for your wonderful insights of information. A teacher us that activate the magnets of curiosity, knowledge, them onto his pupil. I am certain strategies would be added to by not all, but most of the student body. Thank you very much. So right now, I open the floor to anybody that would like to ask a question. You can unmute your mic and ask personally, or if not, you can send the chat and read it and ask whichever panelist you choose that specific question to. Now, don't rush at once to ask questions. Okay, so Anita has a question for Laura and Rachel. What was one specific thing that posed a challenge for y'all during this period and how you dealt with it?
Rachel, you can go ahead if she wants, please. Sure.
Hi, sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it in full.
No problem. What was one specific thing posed as a challenge for y'all during this period and how did you deal with it?
So a specific thing that posed a challenge is what you're asking?
Yes.
Oh gosh, so many things have posed a challenge during this time. Let me try and think of one that may help everybody. I think initially it kind of felt like all the days were running into each other for me. And, you know, things happened quickly. And we were thrown into this dynamic without any warnings, really. Even though we knew it was going on, you know, around the world, we didn't probably expect it to. I think a lot of people did not expect it to come to Trinidad for some reason. Like it was just gonna stay, you know, abroad. I was in London actually, like right before it hit. So I was already hearing things of, you know, when we were in London, it was late February. It was like the end of February. And Italy had closed their borders at that time. And it was getting very real over there. So I was kind of caused to be very cautious while I was in London, and I saw people wearing their masks and I was wearing my mask, and this was late February, you know, sanitizing all the time. When I came back to Trinidad, it was March 3rd, and I was being very careful around my children and kind of like almost we stayed home, kind of self-quarantining, and then bam, we heard, okay, like the next week after that, we heard first case in Trinidad, and it was like, whoa, you know? And I think it was prioritizing, I think it was trying to figure out how to make home a functional environment for everybody in the household while all of us were always at home. That was a little bit difficult. It still is difficult, you know. I have young children, and I'm always having to, you know, right now I'm surprised that none of them have come into the room. My husband's doing a good job. But yes, the days felt like they were running into each other, and it was like trying to find balance, trying to, you know, figure out a schedule that works for everybody, even though it's still ever changing. You know, when you have children, I feel like your schedules are, you know, forever changing, and just adapting to this new way of life while staying sane. And so I think for me, again, it comes back to like self-care and taking care of yourself, your mental health and your mindset, while all this crazy stuff is going on around us and around the world. I think if you can take your mind first, you know, everything else starts to kind of fall into place. And regardless of what's going on around you, if your mindset is in a good place and your mental health is taken care of first, then you can find a way to balance your life and balance everything that's not so normal for you. You know, I'm accustomed to having help in my household, and I went from having help and having a child that I was taking to school every day to no more help in the household and not having my other child in school, which was a very big challenge for me, because he's a high energy level child. I mean, he wakes up at the crack of dawn, 5 o'clock, you better be ready. He's asking you why you're not awake. The sun is up, mommy, you know? And so, and then my other child, she will wake up at 10 a.m. and she will stay up at night until midnight. And, you know, so mommy is getting like 5 hours of sleep, if even, and doing everything else. So I think it's about taking care of your mental health during this time, number one, and then figuring out a way to balance and manage everything that's going on in your household, and creating some kind of structure to keep you sane. Because like I said, we're kind of running a marathon that has no end right now. You know, at first I was waiting, okay, this is gonna be over soon, and then I'm just like standing still now. Like, I don't know when it's gonna be over, you know? So it's about you know, finding those coping mechanisms that work well for you to bring some normalcy, you know, back into your life?
So for me, as it was mentioned before, I am studying physiotherapy, which is be a very hands-on, it's a very hands-on program, very practical. And I was actually in the middle of my mid-semesters when when Jamaica got its second case, because they actually had one. There was a scare at first, and then they actually got one, and then they waited until like the second case to then say that they were going to close things down. They were going to close school down, and then once they said that, the Thursday, I was like back home the Saturday, and I was supposed to have actually the Friday. I had one the Wednesday, and I had one the Friday. So I was literally like stopped in the middle of my mid-semesters, which is also very difficult because the concept of physio is basically like medicine and then learning the actual rehabilitation toward whatever difficulty or whatever it is. So it's a lot. The challenge for me was having such a hands-on program, but then having to come online and having to adapt to because we usually have practical and written exam, and having to adjust to basically learning the practical aspect of things by reading and trying to attend lectures and trying to understand and make the best of it. That was one of my struggles. That was one of the struggles or one of the challenges that I was faced with personally. And what I had to do was really just take the initiative to try to find videos on YouTube as best as I could have to try to make sense out of it. Like I was never really the type of person to go out and find extra resources. Like I would really just use what was recommended and kind of just, stay safe space, not really give myself extra work. I was not very big on that. But during this period, I really had to take the initiative if I wanted to ensure that I was still competent as of when I graduate. I can't really use this as an excuse, that, well, I had online classes, so that's why I don't know how to do that when somebody comes to me with an injury. I can't use that excuse. I don't want to use that excuse. So for me, I had to find or take the initiative to find ways to get with it. And I have my family, so they were my guinea pigs when I had to do like my videos to submit to my lecturers and when I had to practice it and maneuvers and whatever. And I mean, it's three of us. My mom, she has three daughters, so it was a 3-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 21-year-old, and it was like three different things that she had to tackle. But really and truly, the support of my family played a very big role in me actually being able to cope with the changes, having that support, because she really did take care of things when I had final exams, because that was a big change, because they made it pretty difficult to write exams online. For some reason they wanted to make it a lot more difficult. So I really struggled initially. I'm not going to lie, I struggled, but I had to roll with the punches because I had a goal set for this academic year. And I still had plans despite COVID. I still had plans to try to achieve them. And my mental health, it did take a dip, so to speak. And I really had to, as I said, that's why I encouraged you all to invest time into finding yourself, building yourself, controlling where your thoughts go. Because I mean, it gets pretty dark sometimes. Sometimes the thoughts get pretty dark, depending especially on what time of the night they hit you, and it's just like you only have everything going. Trust and believe, it gets pretty dark and you feel pretty alone, and you feel like you don't want to call anybody and you don't want to talk to anybody because you feel like if you call, they're not going to answer, and you feel like you're just going to burden them. Like, we get it. We've been there. But I promise you that your friend, a real friend, somebody who is there, even if it's a family member, they would prefer to hear you out and hear what you're going through. And you must also find strength to talk about it. Because like Mr. Muckette said in his presentation before, they were once at that age, and they are there for you. Like, they are there to support you. They are there to be with you. So support is a big, big, big thing for me, and it has been a big thing for me, as well as taking the initiative and understanding that the world is not stopping for me to jump on. It's not stopping and it's not changing, so I need to just get with it and do what I need to do. As difficult as it may be, if I want something to happen, and I'm a very determined person, I'm very stubborn. If I want something, I want it and I'm going to get it. So you really have to like adapt, and that was my main strategy, as well as developing habits that would have helped me attain those goals that I would have set. To touch on the second question that the person asked, what were some of the methods that I used to silence the voice that seems to take control most times? Well, I'm going to be very, very realistic, because I feel like, you know, someone may be able to relate, or maybe it would help hearing that someone can relate to you. As I said before, I suffer with depression. But I've been, you know, working with it, of course, and trying to, you know, basically conquer it. And it got as bad as being, you know, suicidal. And one thing that I had to accept is that as bad as you think things are, there are still good things happening that you could look forward to. And there are still good things that you could focus on and actually change your focus on. Just like Mr. Muckette was saying, you need to literally retrain your mind. And I felt as if I started realizing that it was getting out of control. Like, that voice in my head was getting out of control. And I made the decision to take control. And I actually started, I wouldn't really use the word meditation, because it's not like that, you know, it's not the whole as deep as that, but it was literally taking time. This may sound kind of, it's a weird strategy, but like YouTube has some wavelengths that actually target certain parts of your brain and supposed to help activate certain parts of your brain and stimulate it to aid with like stress relief and stuff. It's like, you know, those relaxing musics, but it's just like at the frequency to help you actually cope with things. So I actually started when I lie down on bed before I sleep, instead of scrolling on my phone, I actually take time to reset and relax and breathe. Breathing has been a very, very big thing, a big strategy. Literally lying down or sitting down and taking a minute to pause has been a big help. And recentering. So to not get caught up in everything that's going on, but to pay more attention to myself and to become more aware of what are my triggers, because that's what you also need to do. You need to become aware of what triggers you to get to that point. So meditating or praying, I am 100% for praying. If you do believe in a higher being, praying helps, because he's always there to hear and listen, and he is literally like your guide. So praying has been a big thing for me as well. And as I said before, when you start realizing, because you actually, it's a conscious effort that you have to make to realize that your mind is actually going, because you overthink and sometimes you don't even know it. You get to a place and you don't even know how you get there. You don't know when it happened, but it's there. And you kind of have to pull yourself from that and make a conscious. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of practice, and I've been doing it for a couple of months. I'm still not a master at it, but it's actively knowing where you are in your head and knowing that you are there, and actively trying to stop it. And when I say stop it, you're not shouting stop at it, but you are literally just picture yourself walking through it all and just like parting it, like just picture parting it and just silencing it, and picture like a big empty space with no negative, like nothing, no negativity, nothing, and just use that to relax and understand that it is okay and that it's not the end of the world and that all your assignments are going to get done. It is possible. Whatever plate, it is not too much for you. I promise you. It feels that way, but I promise you it's okay, and it's okay to cry. I cry all the time. All the time. All the time. I think Mr. Muckette could probably take care of the question.
Yeah. You guys hearing me?
All right. Well, we'd call that. But before we leave, Mr. Muckette answered one of the questions, Daniel, chat, so you can have a read there upon us. So I would like to say thank you to the team for allowing us to be able to be part of this illuminating and remarkable presentation. And I would also like to thank you, the guests, for and questions tonight. The delivery would not have been successful without each and every one of you. Thank you for being up with, and a special thank you to our 3 panelists once again for being here with us tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night and keep safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.